Hey there, guys. I am Jonathan. Welcome to my Compound Life. This is a channel where we build assets, we build habits, and of course, we build freedom. That will be financial freedom, time freedom for you, me, and anyone else that watches my video. So, guys, please remember, if you want to drop me a comment, please refrain from letting me know how many Bitcoins you have. I'm fine with knowing your percentage allocation. It's just quite sad that I have to leave or I have to delete comment whenever you guys actually tell me how many Bitcoins. So please don't do that. Before we get started on this topic, right? Hit the like, hit subscribe, comment below, and let me know which number subscribers you are and where you guys watching from. It's always so nice to hear from viewers. You know, it's because most of the time I'm just recording this by myself, and it's so nice to just hear back from someone. So please leave a comment. Okay, so let's get started, guys. So first, thank you for the a lot of responses. Many of you guys have left me when I first created that video a couple of weeks ago. Essentially, it's one of the Bitcoin video made for people over the age of 50, right? It definitely got a lot of attention, and many of you guys shared how it helped with your thinking. So some viewers actually even asked about, what about 60 plus? Is it still worth it? Is Bitcoin still worth the while? So I found that very, very interesting, as I'm kind of in that phase too. So in that phase, thinking about my future. So today, in today's video, what I want to explore will be Bitcoin for the 60 plus. But of course, don't immediately just go to another video, right? Because it's not just for the older and mature viewers, right? The content itself that I'll be sharing, you know, the insight, it actually goes into, you know, looking into a lot of the Bitcoin's rhythm, especially knowing the fact that when I record this video, Bitcoin is on the fourth cycle and we're about to head into a bear market. So this is why I need a lot of you guys actually pay a lot more attention on this specific video, right? So how this video should really be, essentially this video should be my first Bitcoin cycle, right? Or your first Bitcoin cycle, because if you haven't dabbled into Bitcoin and you're about to dip your toes into Bitcoin, right? I reckon this video is for you too, right? So anyone's first Bitcoin cycle. And for me, at my age now, it's not only about retirement. It's also about leaving legacy for my loved ones, kids, my grandkids, and so forth. So let's unpack and see how Bitcoin fits in all of this, okay? So here we are. In my last video, I used median salary numbers when I go about in doing the projection. But to make this more relatable for a lot of you guys, let's look at two types of people, right? So I try to make this as relatable as possible for someone on a median salary or a bit higher, you know, someone like a professional. So I've been there myself, starting with modest earning, then eventually build things up. So I'll model two gentlemen at around the age of 60. So one is kind of like an everyday earner, and the other one, it's more of an experienced professional. So this way, you can see how Bitcoin fit differently in the two different situations. You know, just a little bit like me. Okay, so before we get started, there are a few assumptions that I've made that I need to call out, right? So before we dive in, right, gentle assumptions for my projection with thinking about someone 60s year of age, resided in the UK as well as the US, with time to build steadily towards retirement at around 67 years of age, right? So although I kind of said 7 years, right? So someone that's looking to be out of the market around 2032, but very likely, I'll get into in a moment when we get into the Bitcoin cycle. Very likely, you'll be out around August 2033. So I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, and of course the DCA monthly or pound cost average, or DCA dollar cost average monthly into Bitcoin for a period of 7 years. So monthly DCA. You can DCA more. That would be good, right? That can bump up the figures a lot. But at any time you kind of DCA less, it's gonna impact the figure, right? So my calculation is purely based on monthly DCA, same amount. Okay, stacking sats, right? And of course, as opposed to lump sum in. Okay, but in fact, if you look into some of the calculation that I've made, you're actually better off lump sum in as early as possible, right? And as long as you've got a longer time horizon, and in our case is 5 years plus, 4 years plus, or 7 years plus, right? Or at least 2 Bitcoin cycle, right? And of course, when I did all of this projection, tax obviously isn't included because I'm no tax advisor. So please check with your tax advisor. And remember, stacking sats is key, right? And just some reminder, 100 million sats makes 1 Bitcoin. So I use this in my own planning too, as it keeps things simple and focused, right? So not assuming anyone will be coming in to buy 1 or 2 Bitcoin lump sum in immediately. If there are such viewer, great, congratulations. I think you definitely made it in life. Probably you won't even need to watch my video, right? But I'm just talking about someone like myself that's starting off, with median salary or slightly higher than median salary. Let me know if this relates to any one of you guys. Okay, so it's crucial that I made this video right now because we are just about finishing the recent Bitcoin cycle and about to head into the next cycle, which is around, at the time of recording, which is the January 31st, 2026, we are about 802 days left until we get into the next Bitcoin halving event. So it's very, very exciting, right? And somehow, if you're in the age of 60, right, it kind of precisely pinpoint that period just for you, so that by the time, if you aim to retire at the age of 67, this will somehow play out perfectly for you, right? So if you're in the 60 this year, you have a nice opportunity to compound, especially if you align with Bitcoin cycles as you head to your retirement age of 67. So cycles are, as a reminder, cycles are the natural flow of Bitcoin, where halving reduced supply, often creating positive moments, creates supply shock, and somehow, we aren't too far from that halving, right? So it fits perfectly if you're at the age of 60 when you're watching my video. Okay, so we are here, somewhere here right now. That's January 31st, right? So we simply just came off from the recent fourth halving, right? And your next entry would be in 2026 November, right? I'll get into explaining why the entry will be on 2006 November. Okay, so the suggested entry and exit for you, right? Which, by the way, it's not financial advice, so do your own research. But somehow, the Bitcoin cycle somehow aligns, and you can gain a lot of traction if you get in and get out of Bitcoin aligning with the halving event, which, by the way, the Bitcoin halving event, it's like clockwork, right? It's almost every 4 years. And the fact that it's clockwork, it just gives us so much more easier way to plan our entry and exit, right? So if you're in your 60s, right? If you're in your 60s, then this would be the timing that you need to look for. You want to capture at least 2 Bitcoin cycle, right? And essentially that would be the halving, the 5th halving, as well as the 6th halving. Okay. As a reminder, the 5th halving will be sometime in 6th of April, right? So some calculation would be on the 12th of April, some on the 18th of April. And for this one, I'm kind of following another one, which is about 6th of April. So these are all estimated date, but they're not too far away from the actual halving date. Okay, it's all dependent on how many blocks gets generated over a period of time. Okay, and the next halving that you want to be on will happen sometime in March 24th, 2032, right? So now you can kind of relate to why I'm making this video for someone who's in the age of 60 quite urgently, because I want you to see this. So initially when I made the video, I kind of felt, you know what, these are not time sensitive video, right? So this can work for anyone. However, it becomes much more crucial and time sensitive if you are at that age range, right? Because you want to maximize and capture the right entry into Bitcoin so that your gain can also be maximized too, right? So, however, if you're someone that doesn't like to look at charts, look at price action, and you just want to stack without worrying about volatility, right? The best thing is ignore this chart, right? What I'm about to tell you, just ignore them, right? And just do your monthly DCA, right? That way you can just keep calm every time when your salary paid you on a monthly basis, whatever you've got left over, right? For that specific amount that I'll go through in a minute, you just stack Bitcoin, right? You don't look at charts. If Bitcoin goes up, you stack the same amount. If Bitcoin goes down, you stack the same amount, right? But what I'm saying here is there are certain time period that can help you to maximize on the number of Bitcoins that potentially you can DCA and stack up, right? So the perfect entry for anyone, by the way, will be sometime in November 2026, right? This is where you can help you to maximize the amount of Bitcoin that you can acquire or stacks, because I want you to take notice of the Bitcoin rhythm, right? Bitcoin often bottoms often 500 days before halving. So a good time to add a bit more, right? So essentially 500 days before this halving, before this date, is November 2026, right? And of course, Bitcoin, it peaks, it peaks after 500 days after halving date. So that somehow falls here, August 2033. Okay, let me further explain this. Okay, so maybe this explain more. So I've shown this chart a lot of time in my daily video, my Bitcoin daily video. So assuming a lot of you probably are aware of this, right? Again, this dotted line reflects Bitcoin halving, okay? And the purple line is the second halving for Bitcoin. The yellow one is the third halving. And of course, us, for the current cycle, we are being reflected on the blue line, okay? So if we simply just follow this, is what it's saying is 500 days pre-halving, that's this period here, right? This is historically when Bitcoin forms its cycle bottom and long-term positioning begins, right? And what I'm trying to do here is highlight in yellow, right? This is where you need to buy more, buy as much as possible, because this usually marks the bottom of Bitcoin. And then, of course, this is where the accumulation matters more than price. Volatility is noise. Conviction in stacking is the edge, right? And of course, 500 days post-halving, this is where Bitcoin has historically reached cycle peaks during this window, right? Supply shock typically unfolds months after the halving and not immediately, right? So after the halving, we wait because Bitcoin mining, all the rewards that they have will be halved. There will constantly be more and more people buying. Trust me, there will be more and more people buying, because Bitcoin is not just being bought up by me and you anymore, right? It's being bought up by MicroStrategy, by the ETFs. And look at, like in my recent Bitcoin daily video, I've highlighted there are more and more products from big banks that are being made, and a lot of these products are getting sold not to individual like you and I, right? These are products for the wealthy, the high net worth individual. So when that kind of buying comes into Bitcoin, there will be a lot of supply shock, right? And if you follow my daily Bitcoin daily video content, I kind of goes into a lot of news update, and you can definitely see the nation's adoption, the states' adoption on Bitcoin, and they're being allocated 10%, right? Or even Bank of America, it's suggesting investors to have at least 4% allocation into Bitcoin, right? So essentially, if the halving, the generation of Bitcoin gets halved, right, it's going to cause a massive supply shock here, right? So how I would approach this, I would do as much DCA on steroid, as much as possible. Maybe 100 out of the 500 days. On the first 100 to 200 days, I will just dump. Non-financial advice, do your own research. This is where I will, do heavy DCA in. And of course, by the time we get closer to the halving date, I'll continue just my daily DCA, but at a more reduced amount. And of course, by the time after halving event, maybe I'll continue to DCA. Maybe I'll just stop, right? And even by the time when Bitcoin hit, goes a lot higher, reach another all-time high, some of you guys may also choose to DCA. But for me, at least, I think I'll just wait, right? So I'll usually, what I did in the recent cycle, right? So this is my third cycle, by the way, right? I never quite know what the hell am I meant to do, but at least in the third cycle, that's what I did. And and I actually found it beneficial for me to, manage my DCA. Okay, and yeah, I think that's something that many of you guys need to take notice, and perhaps, these are definitely just suggestion. It's not financial advice. This is kind of like a strategy that I kind of follow, and what I'm trying to do is to get slightly better improvement in terms of the number of Bitcoin, the number of sats that I can stack up over that few years period of time, right? These are all suggestions. I think many of you guys, because I reckon there's a lot of DCA gang here that watches my video, right? And many of you guys, I think it will continue to work out for all of you guys because many of you guys just do daily DCA. If that's the case, continue to do that. Don't let some of this crazy thinking affect you, right? I'm just suggesting what works for me, right? Because I used to do a little bit of daily DCA, and then afterwards, in my most recent cycle, I actually do this, this ways of stacking, and it worked out pretty well for me. Okay, so not financial advice, do your own research and so forth. Okay, so of course, these are just ways of stacking, like working towards the rhythm of the Bitcoin, right? So, 1 year of bear market for Bitcoin, followed by multiple years, maybe 2-3 years of bull cycle for Bitcoin. Okay, so this is why I want you guys to have some knowledge of this and decide on what's your entry as well as your exit. Okay, let's move on. So when I did the projection in the last video, specifically for people at the age of 50, I did it quite conservatively, like 10 to 12%, as well as the CAGR from suggested by MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, that was 30%, right? So a lot of you guys actually came back and said, hey Jonathan, the CAGR that you mentioned are too conservative. It's not good, right? So just to be clear, right? In terms of CAGR so far for Bitcoin is about 91.33%, right? So from inception through to December 2025, Bitcoin in USD, right, achieve a 91.33% compound annual growth rate over a 14 years period. Okay, but of course, I'm not gonna literally use 91.33%, right? What I'm trying to do, I'm going to use these three estimates when I'm doing the projection, right? So of course I still keep the 12%. That's kind of like my gentle 12% to keep things real and keep things grounded. And I know Bitcoin will do better than 12%, because 12% is something you would expect from the Vanguard S&P 500. In the UK, it's called VUSA for the ticker symbol, right? I know Bitcoin will outperform Vanguard for sure, right? But just to keep things real a bit, right? In the event, if somehow metals still continue to perform in the next cycle, you never know, right? So maybe Bitcoin would return a 12% CAGR in the coming few years. I don't know, right? But we'll see. And of course, I've incorporated Michael Saylor, 30% thesis. And I think in recent months, or recent week, last week, Cathie Wood came back with 63% from her research for big ideas for 2026. So if you guys want to reference that, go search that out. Okay. And somehow when doing this projection, I kind of felt, you know what, Bitcoin will definitely beat 30% CAGR, right? It would be nice if it can go exceed 63%, right? However, I reckon in between would be the in between would be the sweet spot, right? Maybe 45, 50%, right? So let's start. It's getting more exciting now. Okay, let's start. So in order for me to make this as relevant, I think I will use two different typical personas. So let me know in the comment section if any of these gentlemen kind of relates to anyone, right? So also let me know if I'm far off, because usually I know I am, right? I'm terrible with numbers and probably will have to recalibrate the model a little bit for the next video. So appreciate any kind of feedback. So for each case, I'll show median and higher salary. This way, it's relatable for different paths like mine over the years. So let me introduce all of you guys to Steve and Richard. Okay, so meet Steve and Richard. So Steve is age of 60. Steve isn't chasing millions, but he just wants to make sure the basic are covered and maybe have a little leftover for the grandkids. Okay, so he's located in the UK and the US. Typical occupation would be Steve, a full-time worker. He could be a retail supervisor working in the warehouse, coordinator. He's definitely a skilled tradesman or middle level type of admin or management role. Okay, so I'm kind of using the median salary for both country. In the UK is about £35,000 and in the US is about $59,000. So what Steve wants to achieve is Steve has always been careful with money, right? So he's never flashy, always paid the bills on time, so no credit card type of issue. He would love to take the grandkids on short holiday, fix up the house every now and then, or just have a bit of breathing room if unexpected costs come up, right? Maybe it could be because of the boiler, because of the car, his car breakdown every now and then, right? And the next person that I'll be doing the model will be Richard. Okay, so Richard built things for a living. Now he's building financial security for the next chapter and maybe for the next generation too, right? So he's the same, resided in the UK, US. The type of occupation for Richard will be skilled professional, could be a civil engineer or some sort of engineer, right? Definitely not one of them data science engineer or data engineer that earns in the 100,000s or millions. Okay, so he could be a manager, a teacher, a senior person, or a chartered specialist, like a chartered engineer or something, right? And for Richard, what I have got down for him would be annual salary around £70,000, about 110,000 US dollars. So Richard already has a decent private pension and savings already built up. So he wants more because he wants to travel more with his wife, help the kids to buy homes where he can, right? And of course, upgrade the house every now and then because his wife might be complaining about the kitchen, the stoves too old and want a new one. And maybe leave a meaningful legacy for his kids as well as grandkids, right? Let me know in the comment section if you can relate this individual, right, with your current circumstances too. Okay, so let's move on. So let's look at Steve, right? Median salary, £35,000 a year. After tax and national insurance, that's roughly take-home pay, £2,200 a month. In the US, Steve has a median salary, $59,000. After federal and state tax, that's roughly $3,600 a month to take home. Okay, so let's move on. For Steve, taking home £2,200 a month after him paying for housing, food, bills, and family, what he's got left over could be £200 to £300 per month for investment. Whereas Steve in the UK, his take home is about $3,600 a month. After housing, food, bills, and family, he has around $200 to $400 per month for investment. Okay, so quickly reiterate that. For the UK, Steve, £250 dollar cost average into Bitcoin. And for the US, Steve, around $300 that can put into Bitcoin through monthly DCA. Okay, so what exactly, after 7 years, 84 months later, in total, Steve UK invested around £21,000, whereas Steve US invested $25,200. Okay, and as mentioned earlier, the three different Kaggers, that's my Kagger, that's Michael Saylor's Kagger, that's Cathie Wood's Kagger, right? So these are the Kagger percentage I have used to create the model, right? So in regards to the investment return for UK Steve, right? UK Steve, at the base case, £21,000 will get to about £32,000. In a good case, £21,000 get to about £61,000, right? That's about 2.9x. And in a bull case, right, £21,000 can potentially get you to about £185,000. That's not bad at all, right? So that's about 8.8x. So remember that I mentioned about the sweet spot that we all aim to, do our dollar cost average in and dollar cost average out. We're looking somewhere in between here. Okay, so that could easily be about 5x or 6x. Okay, so aim about 5 to 6x over a 7 years period of time with, your dollar cost average of £250 or $300. Okay, so Steve, in the US, you invested about $25,200 in the base case, which I think will be highly unlikely because Bitcoin Kaggers obviously is much more higher, right? In the base case, you get about $39,000 back, right? However, in a good case, your $25,000 will get to about $73,000. And in a bull case, right, you actually get about 8.8x, $25,000 to about $220,000. Okay, so what does that mean in the number of Bitcoin that potentially you can accumulate, right? So over a period of 7 years, right, $21,000, right? Because I need to take into consideration, I know Bitcoin is costing something like $81,000 now, right? So 0.21 Bitcoin seems rather low, right? But in reality, knowing that Bitcoin does this 12%, 30%, or 63% CAGR. This is very realistic if you're just simply doing dollar cost averaging in, right? So if you invested £21,000, Steve, right, your base case is 0.21 Bitcoin. In US case, Steve, is about 0.2 Bitcoin. Okay, in a good case, it would be about 0.14 Bitcoin, and in a bull case, it would be about 0.8 to 0.9 Bitcoin. Not a lot of Bitcoin, right? So, just want to reiterate this to all of you again. You know what? By the time when I did this calculation, all I want to do is just FOMO into Bitcoin now, right? So I know I haven't been using the latest figure, right? Because I made this slides like a couple of days ago when Bitcoin was still at 90,000. Bitcoin now is, at the time of recording, got down to about 80,000, right? So it's on discount, guys. It's on discount, right? So assume Bitcoin now is at 90,000. Today, right, you can buy 0.1 Bitcoin for $9,000, right? And in the US, I'm using US, in 7 years' time, if you just do monthly DCA in with $300 a month, right, you can only get to 0.08 worth of Bitcoin. And that's with $25,200. Okay, guys, let that sink in. Okay, so you tell me, would you rather lump sum in, knowing that you've got a longer time frame before you want to get out, or would you just want to DCA in? Okay, so this is why in some of my video, I always emphasize the point that, guys, right, just get into 0.1 Bitcoin now, right? Where possible, just get to 0.1 Bitcoin as soon as you can, right? Because I know that's not going to be generational wealth for a lot of people, but for some, this will be good top up or some sort, right? Yeah, so let these numbers sink in, guys. So coming back to Steve, how will Bitcoin impact my retirement, right? So recap, 60 years of age, aim to retire at 67, right? So in the British, Steve, UK state pension, no matter if you earn £50,000 or £100,000 or £200,000, you get the base state pension, and that comes to about £12,000 547. Okay, so this, by the way, in the UK, it's state pension only. It's excluding any of your private pension, because back then, I know that when I worked for a huge corporate company, right, I think we can pay in something like 4% private pension, and then the company would top up another 4%, something like that. So that we, apart from our state pension, we actually have some sort of private pension that, you know, can also compound over a period of time, right? But I am purely just talking about the UK state pension. And of course, you need to be eligible in order to get the state pension by ensuring that you have to pay for how many long years, right? So for me, you know, when I was in China for about many long years, for about 13 years, I also contribute into the state pension. So I think it was called voluntarily contribution, right? So that in the end, I get this figure, right? So in the UK, state pension, you get about 12,547 per annum. And that comes out to approximately £1,045. Okay, that's not a lot, guys, right? Especially if you still have to pay rent, that will be pretty detrimental, right? And that comes out to about £241. So assuming assuming, right, you are the British Steve, and then you've got your property, your mortgage, everything paid off. I think for one individual person, or actually for two, I think it's still okay, right? So how much can Bitcoin top up for you, right? If you only get your UK state pension without private pension, right? So I'm sure many of you guys are at the stage, maybe you may have one properties paid off, or maybe you have one property that you live in and another paid off, right? You might have inherited that from your parents, take for instance, and somehow you also have some sort of private pension going, right? So if we're purely just looking into the UK state pension, right? At this stage, how much Bitcoin can top up? So it can top out about £95 per month. So I'm looking at the monthly basis, about £173 per month. If you kind of in a good case, or in the bull case, right? You'll be able to top up about £520. Okay, so I kind of felt okay with all of this Bitcoin that you've been able to accumulate. If you draw down about 4% safe amount, right? And very likely you don't have to draw out everything all in one go, right? You can draw out some in the bull market, maybe draw out 8% in the bull market and use that 4% for your coming year, and at the same time not cash out, not draw out, but use another 4% for the bear year. I think that makes so much sense. You just keep that Bitcoin and let that compound over time, right? And I'm not saying compounding interest. I'm just saying compounding in the sense that because Bitcoin is following, this amount of different CAGRs that I'm doing the estimate, right? So bear that in mind. And so you tell me, right? If we can get to about £300-400 a month, I know it's not going to be life-changing, right? It's not going to be life-changing wealth. However, it's still a good top-up, right? Imagine having this top-up, okay? Whereas for the Steve of the US, his Social Security, which, by the way, I don't really know the US market. Let me know in the comment section if I got this wrong, right? I might need to recalibrate again, just to make sure that it works for everyone, right? So in the US, Social Security, $24,852 per annum. So by months, that would be about $2,000 per month, and approximately $479 per week, right? And if you kind of do dollar cost average over a period of time, your investment of $25,200 will get you to about 220, well, at different stage, right? So it could be 1.5x, 2.9x, or 8.8x, but I'm hoping somewhere in the middle, right? So what exactly would that get you, right? Your top up, because of Bitcoin, at the base case, it will be about additional $129 top up a month. Okay, not sure whether that's good or not. Or $224 top up per month if you're using Michael Saylor's CAGR. Or if you're on a bull case, that could be $741 per month top up. I reckon $741 top up is pretty awesome, right? So somewhere in between, let's say $500, $550, or even $600 per month top up, I reckon that's pretty good, right? So again, not life-changing wealth, but I reckon, it's still not too late, right? It still gives you the chance to have something to top up, right? And at the same time, the longer you can have this running in the market, and let that compound, potentially this can go even higher, right? Of course, all of this are just purely based on my projection, my estimation. So you have to consult with your accountant or, tax advisor and whomever, right? All of this are not financial advice. So you guys need to do your own research, guys. Okay, let's move on to Richard. Median salary, £70,000 a year. After tax, national insurance, he'll get to take home about £4,300, $4,300 a month. Median salary in the US, $110,000, resulting in about $6,800 a month take home. And of course, with all of this, after £4,300, UK Richard have around £500 per month for investment. So obviously, knowing that he'll probably have something to contribute towards his housing, food, bills, family, and other investment. So probably Richard doesn't really just rely on Bitcoin for his retirement, right? And in the US, $3,600 leads to about $600 per month for Bitcoin investment. Okay, in that case, these are the amount that Richard in the US as well as UK will be doing his DCA. As a result, after 7 years, 84 months later, right, Richard would have invested about £42,000 or $58,800. Okay, and taking all of this CAGR into consideration, his investment return will be looking like this, right? £42,000 getting to about 64,000, £122,000 or £371,000, right? So I think a lot of you guys, when you guys look at this 8.8x, it becomes a lot more attractive, right? And as I've mentioned earlier, the sweet spot is somewhere here, right? So we won't be able to time the top or time the bottom, right? Somewhere at around 5x, 5.5x, or 6x will be our aim for all of our DCA, right? So in the US Richard, 58,800 investment will result in about 90K, not a lot, $171,000. Now we're talking, right? Or $519,000. Yeah. So aim somewhere around $300,000 or $400,000 return. That's the aim, right? That's why we do DCA. That's why, I've mentioned about what's the best time to enter and what's the best time to exit. So take note of that. Of course, these are all speculation based on historical trends. They're not financial advice. So do your own research, right? I'm just letting you guys know my thinking, my kind of ways of planning on how I want to stack Bitcoin, right? And what does it look like in the UK? Same state pension. So this is why I want to move to the US after looking at this. You earn more, you still get the same amount of state pension. You earn less, you get the same amount of state pension too, right? So a little bit unfair. So yeah, don't want to be in the UK. So these are that amount, I reckon, for someone in the UK. These are good retirement amount. And of course, these are good retirement amount for the US too, right? So looking at this, right? For Richard in the UK, if we can get into the sweet spot, right? So the sweet spot would be about £400 to about £1,200. If you can get about £600 or £700 a month, I reckon that's a pretty decent top up, right? Even for the US, we look through this, $569 to about $1,729, right? I think this top out is definitely sensible and will be very, very meaningful someone going through that retirement age, right? So it's the sweet spot that we all want to aim to get to. So I don't know about my calculation. Let me know whether you guys agree or not in the comment section. And thank you guys. Thank you for joining this journey with me, right? Like this video if it somehow resonated with any of you guys. Let me know in the comment section. Subscribe or comment your thoughts. So in conclusion, you're not too late, right? Because I know a lot of people are asking in the comment section, am I too late at this stage? Am I too late at this age, right? You're not too late. You're never too late. No one will ever be late into Bitcoin. But we also need to be realistic of our available investment horizon, right? And in this special exercise, I'm looking into 7 years, right? 2 Bitcoin cycle. So that's why I always encourage all of us, to start early, to stack earlier, right? If you don't like to look at charts, start DCA today, right? Same amount, 7 years, see how far you can get to, right? If you like the content, right, like how I've mentioned it earlier, like some of the timing, some of the rhythm where you have to stack harder at the beginning of that bear cycle, right? So these are some of the things that I think can get yourself more Bitcoin. But anyway, let's all continue to build assets, build great habits, and of course, all of this will eventually lead to us building financial freedom. And that will be financial freedom, time freedom for you and me and our loved ones. Of course, that's what we want to pass on as legacy. Okay, so thanks for watching the video, guys. Please drop a like where possible, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.